Welcome back again with the video number 6 of Oracle Real Application Cluster 19c lab setup. As we can see here in front of us that we have done the first 5 major points of our plan to have this lab setup. So we reach right now to how we can set up the cluster network. Of course, here it's a simple network, so it's not a big issue, but in case if we have production environment, good to know that there is a recommendation from Oracle to have a maximum high availability for the network configuration. And this task is for the network administrator of the organization or the company, but good to know, especially if you are going to troubleshoot the issue in future for your cluster network or cluster services that running there, if to identify also if this issue of the network or if is this issue from the cluster itself need to maintain. So let's move to the documentation that I prepared for this part, and let's look at it and have a small discussion to just illustrate for you exactly what's the cluster network look like. As you can see in front of you, we have this part of our lab documentation. Set up cluster network. So to set up 2-node Oracle RAC network, we need 9 IPs, 7 on public network and 2 IPs on private network for cluster interconnect communication. So those 2 IPs should be private between the 2 nodes. They should be only used for the cluster interconnect communication. So the cluster network, the current lab network setup will be simple as shown below. You can see here. So I think I put this one because I'm using VirtualBox. It's not clear for you, especially because everything is virtual, including the 2 servers or 2 nodes are virtual, the switch and IC, everything is virtual, so it's not clear for you. So I put this section just to make everything clear for you, especially if you have a physical component. Let's say you have physical switches and physical servers. You need to configure this network for it. So you have here a clear idea how to do that. So let me just explain here. Of course, we have 2 nodes, which is 2 servers. In our case, we have virtual. In case if you have physical one, it will be the same. You should have 2 NICs, 2 network interface adapters. And here also we have 2 switches. One will be configured as a public. Outside the network can reach this switch. Then they can also, this switch allow them to reach this public interface. The same for this node. So as we can see here also I put some IPs because here we have public IP and virtual IP. So the public IP, it's this IP you can access it for administration. Virtual IP and 3 scan IPs are managed, and also the virtual IP in the second node. Those IPs are managed by cluster. It's not managed by the operating system. So the cluster manage those IPs, and those IPs, they may fail over. Let's say if this node is let's say faulty, or there is something wrong and it's down, this VIP, it will fail over to another node. Once you bring this node back, this VIP will connect here, and some of the scan IPs also will be here as a virtual IPs, will fail over again to this server. So this managed by cluster, and it's not managed by the operating system. So just keep an eye of them. And once also I have the cluster, I will show you exactly what this means and how you can see them and how you can check which node have those IPs. Let's move if we have a production environment. So for maximum high availability on the network and the best practice to have redundant network setup, you need 4 NICs and 4 switches. So 2 public IPs teaming, 2 public NICs teaming both of them. So, and 2 switches the same for the public, 2 switches for private, 2 NICs also for private network. The same for the second node. So in case if we have faulty in one switch, the second switch keep the network working and then this faulty switch we can replace it or reconfigure a new one and replace it. The same for here as well. In case one of the NIC is faulty, we can replace it, and then the network and the cluster keep running, especially for mission critical database, and it's run for 24 hours, 7 days a week. This configuration can help a lot to have this goal, to have this cluster running for longer without any interruption. So the next video I will show you exactly how we, especially for the IPs, how we can set the IPs and how we can configure the IPs, and also what Oracle recommend for those IPs. So let's move the next part of this video. So as you can see here, now we need to add the IPs to the host file. Oracle recommend to have those IP on the DNS. Only the private IPs, they should be on the local host file, but I add them in case if we, let's say if there is anything happened, so the cluster keep running in case of the DNS is off, but the application will not be able to reach the cluster. So it's good to have them here in the host file, but as well you need to add them also to the DNS. Okay, so let's start with the first one, 10.10.20.111, which is 111. This one for the first node public IP. This is the second node public IP. This is the private. You can see here it's different subnet, and this subnet is 10.10.20, which is the public. So that means anything from outside this cluster can and is able to reach this node, this IP, but this IP is only for the interconnect. That means it's reached privately between the nodes. So we have also here the VIP, which is the virtual IP, and this one is for the fail. This one also used by cluster to have the access. This one also, if the cluster, let's say this node is right now off, or there is something happened, it's failed, this IP will migrate, or it will be fail over to this node, to the second node. Okay, so let's right now move to the RAC. We have the RAC cluster scan, which is, you can see here we have 3 different and this should be mandatory to have a DNS configuration if you will use it for the application to connect this database. You can see here we have 3 IPs, different IPs, but we have the same cluster name, okay, which is RAC cluster scan and RAC cluster scan. It should be on the DNS. This is mandatory to be in the DNS, especially if you are configure this one for production environment. Okay, let's have this added to the host file. Let me just copy this one. Let's do vim etc hosts. Okay, like this. Then I will paste here. Then I will exit and save. Then let's ping RAC 1. Let's see. Yeah, it's pingable. So that's it. We have right now this added. Of course, you cannot ping those IPs. This one you cannot ping it as well. This one and the scan, because still we don't have those IP where they will be managed by RAC cluster or the cluster clusterware and grid infrastructure. So you cannot ping them. And this one also, because we don't have the second node, I will clone this machine once we have done a couple of things, and then it will be ready so we can ping all of those IPs later on. So that's it for this video. See you next video. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.